All right, welcome everybody to tonight's pre-health panel. The focus is on physician assistant or associate school. I'm really happy to have 3 of our alumni volunteers here tonight. I'm going to let them do all the talking. And first, we're going to kick it off with Megan. Why don't you tell us your class year, your major, any minors, and we'll start there.
Okay. I graduated December of 2019. I was a biology major, chemistry minor, pre-PA, biomedical sciences, both were my focus. And I'm currently at Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, New York.
Thank you. Sebastian?
My name's Sebastian. I graduated in spring of 2018 with a major in biology and a pre-health concentration, I think it was at that point. And then I graduated from Hofstra PA program in 2020, right as COVID was starting. So now I'm working right now at a cardiology office as a PA at Mather Hospital here in Port Jefferson, New York.
Go ahead, Dylan.
So I graduated in May of 2020. I had a biology major and no minor, and currently I'm in Rutgers PA school in Jersey.
Fantastic. Let's start with Sebastian this time. Sebastian, did you come into SUNY Oneonta with the same pre-health concentration that you left with, and maybe why or why not if you switched?
I think at that point I came in with the same concentration. I knew I kind of wanted to do something in the medical field, and I had already kind of had my eyes on physician assistant at that point. And then once I got there, I just stayed in the pre-health concentration that I was in, and I kept shadowing and things like that as an out. Once we were home and whatnot for vacation, so I just stuck with it throughout.
Sure. And a follow-up to your sort of office that you're working in now, cardiology. Did you know that that's what you wanted to sort of study, or did you find it?
The cardiology, I think I would say I always liked it. And I think once being in PA school and graduating and going through rotations and everything, that's kind of when I figured out what I wanted to do.
Cool, thanks. Dylan?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? You lagged out the first time.
Sure can. When you came to SUNY Oneonta, did you have the same pre-health concentration that you left with? And if not, why did you change?
Yeah, I actually came in with a different major. I came in as a physics major, and I quickly figured out I liked physics, but not that much. So I switched to biology, and originally I was pre-PT. I worked in a PT office for about 2 years, and ultimately decided I liked PA once I started working at Fox Hospital, actually, as a scribe.
Very cool. And Megan?
So I was actually a transfer into Oneonta, and my first school I went to actually was not anything pre-PA. I was actually research focused. So I had a biochemistry major at my first school with a minor in math. And so when I came to Oneonta, it was because I knew I wanted to go into PA. And so I switched my major and minor and my concentration all to meet the PA. And I stuck with that for the 2.5 years I was at Oneonta.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Dylan, it doesn't sound like you took a gap year based on your timeline, but maybe you took some gap time. And what did you do before you decided that you were going to head right into PA school?
So my kind of gap year was applying the spring of my senior year. So that is kind of like a built-in gap year, I guess, just because it takes time to do the interviews and submit all your applications. So in that time, I actually did a lot, and I think that helped me get into PA school. I worked more as an EMT. I took up a crew leader position at my local emergency squad. And then I worked at the step-down unit and floating between there and the CT-ICU during COVID at St. Francis Hospital in Roslyn, New York. So I feel like by the time I got to my interviews, I kind of had a little something extra to tell them.
Sure. And Megan, how about you? Did you take any gap time?
So technically it was a gap year because I graduated early. So I was supposed to graduate May 2020, but I had the credits in December to graduate. And so, but I still applied April 2020, which would have been when I applied originally. And at that, I was already working at that time. So I just worked extra in the progressive care unit at my hospital. And also through Oneana, I had an internship in the ER at a hospital in Albany, where I'm from. So that was a really good experience for me to go into having.
Awesome. Thank you. And Sebastian.
I also went straight in, same thing as, what's it called? As Dylan was saying, applied in spring and then kind of had that year to, I guess, relax a little bit while we were up there for senior year. And then a couple interviews here and there that we'd have to drive down for. But then afterwards, there's a couple months, I think like 2 or 3 months before PA school started, and, just vacation a little bit and trying to decompress before school started. So.
Sure. I can imagine that's a lot, jumping right from senior year into such a professional graduate work, so hats off to all of you. All right. What advice regarding preparing for the interview process or even the application process would you give the current students as they're probably just starting that process themselves or thinking about it? And we're back up to Megan to start.
So my first piece of advice would be apply as soon as you can, because I know a lot of schools are first come, first serve. Like I know upstate is first come, first serve. I bought a book that helped me decipher like the different ways that people could interview you. So I found that very helpful. And then I would also say, although you like practice, don't sound too much like a robot, because they definitely catch on to that and they definitely will call you out for that. So as hard as it is to stay as natural as you can while not sounding scripted, but sounding professional at the same time.
Great, thank you. Sebastian?
Yeah, I kind of, agree with everything that you were saying. Definitely apply as early as you can. I would say kind of know where you're going to apply a little bit and kind of know their requirements, because every school is different. Some require 100 hours of work, like shadowing or internship hours. Other schools ask for 1,000. So some, you might think you're good for one school because you have 100 hours, and then you go to apply to 5 other schools and they all have 500-hour requirements. And then for the interview process, I would say the same thing. Try and make a connection with the person you're interviewing with. It could be anything. During mine, I made a connection with veterans. I worked at a veterans home, and then I made a connection with one of the interviewers who had a father who was a veteran. So it's kind of play the interview off of who you're with and what they're saying, and kind of just try and make the connections where you can. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Dylan, what would you add?
I'd say definitely take your time and fill out every possible section that you can on CASPA. If there's a place for you to write an essay or a supplemental application or an optional part of a supplemental, definitely fill all those out. I feel like those definitely help you stand out because they get thousands and thousands of applicants every year. And then when you're writing your essay, just it's one thing to say like, I'm a good person, I like to help people, but I think it helps if you try and show them your experiences instead of just telling them these things. And then same thing, I'd say have some bullet points of what you want to talk about. It's still an interview, just like Sebastian and Megan had said, but try and be yourself, because like Megan was saying, I've sat in on a couple interviews, and the professors and the students listening can definitely like see right through you if you're just kind of reading right off a scripted answer. So just be yourself in the interview. That's really what they're looking for.
Great advice. Thank you. Dylan, is there anyone, professor or otherwise on campus, that really helped you get through the application process?
It's kind of a team effort, honestly. I would jump back and forth between Tammy's office to Highville, and then I would go down and talk to Flo. So they kind of each gave me their own input. Highville helped me a lot with academically, because he would, I was basically asking him like, oh, like, should I retake classes? Because I could have bolstered up my GPA a little bit. And had gotten possibly a concentration in chemistry if I'd taken one more class. And he basically just said, like, basically what Megan and Sebastian and I have been telling you, so they'll see right through it. They'll know you just took that chemistry class because you wanted the concentration. So do what you like, basically. And that has worked out for me in this program because I chose parasitology because of that. And that definitely helped when we were going through didactic year. Same thing with MamPhys. So yeah, I would definitely just recommend talking to your professors and having them help you get through the process in any way you can.
Great, thank you. How about you, Megan?
I would say my two biggest were Dr. Heibel and Dr. Schillo. I unfortunately wasn't at Oneana when I applied, but I did reach out to Dr. Heibel and Dr. Schillo for letters of recommendation. Dr. Heibel really helped me. He became my academic advisor during the year or two that I was there. So he helped me look at my transcript, told me, like, Dylan, what if I needed to retake anything. But yeah, I would say both of those were probably my biggest two helpers.
Fantastic. And Sebastian, how about you?
Same as them. You know, it was definitely Shillo, Highvile, and Tammy that were the three that kind of helped me. And again, with the parasitology course, I felt the same way. I took that senior year, and I felt like that gave me a good basis for some things that we learned in PA school, and microbiology too. I know it's a requirement, I think, but again, that was another course too that really helped kind of cement some foundation for PA school.
Fantastic. It's actually a great segue to the next question, which is, are there any non-required courses that you took that you find extremely helpful now? And we'll start with Megan.
One class that actually Dr. Heibel was the one who recommended to me that I also was very beneficial was bioethics. I don't think it was required as a class for the pre-PA concentration, but it's really helpful. It goes over classic medical scenarios that you even talk about in school. It helped me I actually got a bioethic question on one of my interviews, so I felt very prepared for that. So I would definitely say bioethics was the one that really stuck out to me.
Great. Sebastian, you just kind of hit on it. Do you have any extras to add, or are you good?
I feel like the biggest one was parasitology, but I guess the other one maybe like a public speaking course or something like that, just so you feel a little bit more confident, especially because if you're not getting too much hands-on or experience with a patient, it definitely helps to have that, I guess, confidence to go into a room and, you know, tell someone a diagnosis or, you know, tell them they need to change something or whatnot. So I think that helps a little bit as well.
Great. And Dylan.
Yeah, again, like I said before, the parasitology class, mammalian physiology 1 and 2, definitely recommend. I took a neurobiology course with Watanabe. That was amazing. And yeah, same thing with the public speaking class, because that's I feel like kind of something that a lot of students don't expect when they first come in, and you could tell who's kind of caught off guard by it. And I think I took my EMT during a summer, but I think they offer it at Oneonta. So if you could take that, that would be extremely helpful with your patient care hours.
All great tips. Right. Shifting gears a little bit. What activities were you involved with outside of the classroom, whether that be research, volunteer, clubs, work, shadowing, etc.? There's so many options. And how they helped you shift into PA school. And we'll start with Sebastian.
I would say kind of get a little bit of everything. So whether you're doing clubs on campus, like I did Habitat for Humanity, which I felt was great. I did a couple trips with them. We ended up being, you know, going into the leadership too as well, because you can use that when you're going on your interviews. Same thing with the PreHealth Honor Society, the Biology, I think, Honor Society, things like that, where you can do volunteer work through them. And then when you're home, you know, or even when you're up there, like Dylan was saying about the EMT, try and get as many hours as you can. I was working at a cardiology office. Actually, the place that I'm working now is where I shadowed when I was in undergrad. You know, they offered me a job after PA school. And then a couple other offices, orthopedic offices, PT. So you kind of get a big feel for everything that you want to look at, and then you can kind of siphon what you like and what you don't like. So I did PT and OT, and I kind of saw that I didn't like that, but at least I could put it on my resume. And then, you know, you do your PA hours, and you know, you see, oh, okay, this is kind of what I want to do. So just kind of be broad with it and do as many hours and extracurricular activities as you can.
Thank you. Megan?
So when I was at school, I did also the PreHealth Honor Society, biology club, all that kinds of stuff. But I also shadowed, like I said, in the ER back in Albany. And I also shadowed a pediatric PA back in Albany while I was in undergrad. Yeah, I think that's all I really did for shadowing while I was in undergrad. And then when I graduated, I did everything else.
Great. And Dylan?
Yeah, so I also worked in a hospital at Fox Hospital right down the street from Oneonta. I was a scribe there, and that's kind of what segued into my shadowing hours. I shadowed a PA there and a PA on the med surg floor. I was also in the bio and PreHealth Honor Society, like Sebastian and Megan. And I think it's also important to kind of do some things like get involved in some clubs that you like that are outside of academics. Like I ran the fencing club for 4 years in Oneonta, and from what I've heard from a lot of the professors, that was kind of what made me stand out in this kind of in my interview, because they see so many faces and names that when they could be like, oh, the kid that fenced, like, yeah, I remember him. I feel like that kind of that nerd in white, yeah, that will kind of make you stand out. So if you could just get involved in whatever you like you said, Habitat for Humanity, Sebastian, I feel like that could really help you stand out.
Great. Lost my place, but maybe let's start with Dylan. What has been the most challenging aspect of your schooling so far? And what is different about it than undergraduate? Like, how do we get these students to adjust, you know, relatively, I guess, right?
School life balance for sure. You have so many different classes, and you could literally spend 24 hours a day studying and you will still feel like you're behind. So I think a hard lesson learned last semester was to kind of know your limit and when to just kind of like hard call it or switch subjects, or just even call it for the night and take time for yourself. So definitely self-care is a big one that I would say. I had to kind of learn how to pull away from the academics and focus on that. Yeah.
Great. Sebastian?
Yeah, kind of echoing off the same thing. It's that work life balance that you kind of get into once you get into PA school. There's, I would say, a very limited time that you have to, you know, do other things because you're so busy studying and taking tests. But, you know, if you're able to find, you know, a couple hours, you know, a week or whatnot, you know, your weekends, use them wisely, you know, try and enjoy a little bit of, you know, your social time. But again, it's a lot of it is the pace, I think, that picks up. You know, it's to be expected, but you definitely notice the jump quickly because the first couple months get very busy in PA school, and then you kind of get the groove for it. You get your study habits. You kind of know what works, you don't, and then you go on from there. So, yeah.
Great. And Megan?
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. I think the biggest thing with me was like allowing myself to have a break was a very hard concept for me to learn. And everyone tells you, you got to take breaks, you'll get burnt out, but you're like, no, I'm fine, I got to keep going. Like Dylan said, you're like, I feel behind, even though you're not at all. So I think the hardest thing is definitely like telling yourself it's okay to sit down and watch 30 minutes of a show you like, or go to the gym during the day, and you can take an hour out of your day, even if you feel like you can't, because in the end, once you get to the end of the semester, you're going to feel so burnt out, and that's when everything starts to pick back up again, and you really can't afford to mentally or physically be that tired.
All great advice. Thank you. Clearly, it's been a very challenging 2 years since the pandemic hit. And I know, you know, two of you are still in school, and maybe Sebastian, now that you've started practicing, what are some lessons that maybe either your professors are talking about or that you've learned about what you're doing in the medical field and the future of what it's going to look like. If you could speculate, I'll give you a moment. That's kind of a big, broad question, but we'll kick it to Dylan first. So.
Yeah, so I definitely learned that kind of tending to your relationships with your coworkers is definitely important. Especially, I was kind of cycling throughout COVID between going from the CTICU back to working on the ambulance, and I would just kind of repeat that cycle. And I was working about 7 days a week, 6 to 7. So definitely making sure you have your coworkers back, making sure they have your back, and they'll keep you running. Another lesson learned. It's just been a wild 2 years, I'd say. Tend to yourself is a big one, I'd say.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks, Dylan. Megan?
Yeah, I definitely agree that you do have to put yourself first in certain situations. And I actually started working in January of 2020, right before COVID started. So I started work in January, and by March we were full lockdown. So that's really all I know for hospital work is that all these procedures. But yeah, you definitely need to work as a team because that's the most efficient way that stuff is going to get done. Everyone needs to communicate, which is a really big thing. Everyone needs to communicate at all different levels, nurse practitioner, whatever, tech even. As a tech, I know, like, if I noticed something off, I would go immediately to the nurse and be like, hey, like, this patient doesn't look right. So I would say communication is probably the biggest thing that has come out of my experience from COVID.
Thank you. And Sebastian?
Yeah, again, same thing. You want to manage your relationships at work, and you always kind of want to be respectful and professional with everybody, no matter who's in the hospital or wherever you are. It doesn't matter what position they have in the company or in the office or whatnot. And I think that gets you a long way wherever you work. You know, if they see that you're respectful to whoever it is, no matter if they're the attending to tech to whatever it may be. I think that kind of plays a big part in being able to gel well with the team. And then, you know, it's simple things. It's just being respectful to the patients themselves and you know, the other workers around you for, you know, what they need and what they need from you. So stuff like that. But I think the future for professions, for like pre-health professions, is just as strong as it was before COVID. I think PA now, that role specifically is, you know, getting a little bit more traction as well after COVID, because there's a lot more now with online and I guess remote telehealth and things like that. There's more openings for PAs there. In the hospitals, there's always going to be openings. I think a lot of the hospital systems are always pushing towards a bigger mid-level or, you know, ACP, as it's called, provider, you know, healthcare system, where it's mainly driven by PAs and NPs, and you have the attendings, and it's always going to be that, you know, 5 to 1 or 4 to 1, depending on what state you're at. So I think there's definitely a lot of room for growth if you're going to go into a, you know, PA profession. So kind of be excited about that, I guess, that you're not going to be really fumbling for a job too long. It might be you trying to pick your favorite job out of the 3, you know, that you're looking at. So
some good news, if anything, from COVID.
Yeah.
And I hate to end on COVID, so we won't. But why don't each of you, if you could, tell us your favorite Oneonta food that if you could eat right now, whether it be a Tino's cold slice, maybe a Wise Guys sandwich, whatever, Depot wings, I don't know what that would be. And whoever comes up with it first, go ahead and shout it out.
Yeah, I got one right off the bat. I've been craving this for a while. There's a little Greek place called Star Mix Deli. It's a little farther off. It's by Undercover Eggplant. And I would kill for a gyro from there.
Good pick. Good pick.
I actually went out to Oneonta a couple of weeks ago because I was craving with my friend. And we got a Sammy Wise Guy sandwich, and then we got wings later in the night from Depot, garbage wings, because those were the 2 big things that it's been 2 years since we'd been there. And so we were like, we just really want to make a day of it. And and another thing would be probably a Seasons bagel.
Yes. All good choices. All good choices. Sebastian?
Couple, I guess the controversial one, I guess, would be Yellow Deli. As much as their situation is questionable, the food is phenomenal. I would definitely go back to get a sandwich. But personally, I worked at Mills Market while I was at Oneonta, so like going back and just getting a slice of Mills Market, I would be like kind of nostalgic right there. I haven't been able to get back to Oneonta since graduating, but because of COVID and school and whatnot. So looking forward to going back and seeing everything and what's changed.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to turn it over to our guests, Alexandra or Precious. If either of you have directive questions, feel free to come on the screen or type it in the chat. And if your minds are just kind of zooming, you can reach out to either myself or Tammy to get any of these panelists' contact information. I'm sure they'd be willing to answer a one-off question should you have one specifically for one of them. I'll give you a few more minutes to think. Maybe. I appreciate the three of your time tonight. I know that all of your advice is super helpful. And I know I didn't have this kind of opportunity when I was a student way back when. So it's really lovely to see that Oneonta has a really strong alumni network, always willing to jive. I've never asked an alumni to do any of these events and they've said no. So that really just shows that it's a really great and proudful community. So thank you three. I'll be in contact via email. I'll follow up with a link to this lovely presentation tonight. And then just a little thank you from our office. And you know how to contact me should you have any questions about the alumni office or anything that we can do for you. So thank you again and enjoy your studying or your evening or whatever you need to do. And once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.